Welcome to another edition of the CDG BizCast. I'm your host, Christian Gonzalez, co-owner of Creativity Design Group, a digital marketing firm in Houston, Texas. Today we're going to be interviewing my good friend and consumer, Justin Rayl, to discuss the importance of content marketing and get a consumer's perspective on how content marketing should be done and how it can be very effective. Today we are going to be talking about some general content formats that small business owners should be implementing into their marketing strategy. These pieces of content, or these types of content, will help educate your consumers, your audience, and also establish your company and your brand as an authority that they can trust for useful information. So Justin, I would like to start by asking you, what types of content do you like to browse as a consumer? What do you look for when you really need something? Are there any specific types of content that you like to read or watch or listen to or view?
I like to read articles on security updates, on mobile products to make sure that I'm aware of the latest threats so that I can warn my friends who are not who do not spend as much time reading the news as I do. And when I need to know how to do something on a home repair, for example, unclogging a toilet or replacing a toilet part, I like to watch a how-to video on a product, especially if it's been a couple years since the last time I've done something. I often find that I may need a bit of a refresher course to make sure that I don't break the new part when I'm taking the old one apart, so that I don't have to spend extra money to have someone come in and redo something like replace my drywall or something.
Very good. Business owners who are listening, you just heard from a consumer right there that he likes useful content, helpful content that's educational, that could also prevent your customers from making costly mistakes. The example you gave, Justin, is very good for people who are in the plumbing business. If you own a plumbing business, those are the types of how-to videos and how-to articles you should be putting out there.
Because especially with toilets, they often have parts inside the main tank that the consumer does need to replace. And if they can do that themselves, they don't have to call a plumber. But it's good to publish a how-to video so they can watch it on YouTube or another video graphic platform so that they understand how to do it, so that they don't have to call a professional plumber to come in and replace their floor, for example,
Right.
should they accidentally shatter a pipe. But that's a completely different problem.
Right.
Replacing a toilet flapper.
Because if you can educate your audience on how to do these general things, it reduces some of the liability that your own company, in this case a plumbing company, could be facing. You should only be called for major jobs. When it comes to something as simple as repairing a small flapper on a toilet, that's something the consumer should know how to do themselves. Because you don't want to be responsible if something goes wrong for that later. In this case, in the example you gave, repairing the floor.
Yeah, or replacing a shattered pipe.
Right. Business owners should not be afraid of giving away this type of information for free, worried that it might hurt their business if they teach their customers how to do too many things for themselves. Because in cases like this, it can actually be very useful. When they follow your advice and they need help, then they can call you for that advice and you can start getting more leads. In fact, what if you were to put something out there that helps them get started, but maybe still requires some professional help that they can't have? That's a good way of generating leads with content, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, that would be like teaching people how to use a microwave correctly and teaching them how to clean it.
Right.
So that they can use the appliance correctly. But maybe if it has a user serviceable part like a light bulb, maybe make it a little harder to access that just for their own safety, so that they have to call somebody who can take it apart safely,
right,
and replace that light bulb.
That's a good example of a how-to article that's mystifying. If your how-to articles can encourage people to call you for help for things like that, so that way they take apart the microwave safely, for example, then that's a sale right there.
Yeah, because microwaves can be very dangerous for a consumer to take apart because of the high voltage you get exposed to.
Right.
Because magnometers, which are what microwaves use to cook food, are high voltage items that can cause, among other things, plastic and chocolate to melt.
Right.
And you do not want an independent consumer who's not Mr. Electrician to be messing with those parts.
Right. Right. Most consumers in general are discouraged from taking apart consumer appliances or little things like that, such as microwaves, for example, for that reason alone. In fact, the labels on the back of them even say, do not open, to be serviced by qualified technicians only.
Yeah, and the reason they do that is because if you are not a qualified technician, they don't want you taking it apart and doing something the technician can't fix without replacing it.
Right. And your how-to articles that you put out on your company's website should not serve as educational material that will turn you in to a qualified technician. That doesn't make you a qualified technician when you teach people how to do these things. You still need to have one in there in some cases because you don't want to hurt yourself.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to be looking at replacing a damaged wall socket outlet in my house, I'm going to call an electrician for that because I myself, as a consumer who has minor motor control issues, do not feel comfortable working with that kind of voltage. I may not mind taking apart my flashlight to fix that once in a while for the specific issues on that I know how to fix, but wall outlets deal with a much more dangerous level of electricity
Right.
than a little flashlight powered by a couple of double A's.
A good article that an electrician could put out regarding this matter could be a warning article telling you why you should not have a damaged socket installed in your house. And the article could talk about how it's dangerous and why you should call a qualified electrician to come to your house and get it replaced. That will be a good article that you can post if you're an electrician. If you're an electrician, you have a company with several qualified electricians, then a good article that you can put out would be about safety tips regarding this types of equipment. The more you can discourage people from doing stuff like this themselves, just helps your company out in general. You'll start seeing more leads coming in. Educational material is very useful out there.
Yeah, especially if you specialize in publishing safety warnings about don't do this, here's why.
Right. Safety warnings and how-to articles in general about proper care are both useful pieces of information that people will take with them and apply in real life.
Yeah.
Another piece of content that small business owners should be publishing regularly should be blog posts. Before I get into that, Justin, why do you think blog posting can help out small businesses if they post regularly, in your opinion?
Because it'll boost your rating in Google on the local rankings.
Right.
Because they look for people to be within a certain XYZ distance of their house.
That's right.
So if your nearby homeowners that need your business, if you're putting out blog posts and maintaining your website correctly, are going to be directed to your business versus your competitor who's not doing that, because Google will think that your competitor may have gone out of business, whereas you're still there, still current, keeping up with things. And that's why it can be a very good idea to hire a social media handler in your company as a sales lead management tactic.
Right. Or Google does look for blog posts, and everything you said was on point. If you're blogging and your competitor isn't blogging, then you're ahead of them in the game. You're actually showing that you care about educating your audience, that they know that you're an authority. You want to establish yourself as an authority when you're publishing these posts.
If you're putting out clear, concise information that is verifiable, especially when it comes to proper care and maintenance of, for example, a washing machine or a dryer, and why there are certain behaviors you do not do around them, and articles on how to maintain it, or possibly even if you're an appliance repairman, having a monthly thing about reminding people to maintain their equipment on a certain day of the month. As is common in the medical field, sometimes some medical providers will have an email list that you can sign up for to be reminded of your so-called buddy check, to do your monthly due diligence, to help yourself out, look for minor problems that can be addressed before they become major medical issues.
Right. And we're going to talk about email marketing and newsletters and subscriptions later on in this episode. But that's a good point. You're right about that. Blog posts are a great way to educate your audience about things like that. When you're educating your audience about the products that you sell or the services that you sell, you're establishing authority. You're showing your audience that you know your stuff. Your company knows its stuff. All of its employees knows its stuff. You're also showing that you care about making sure that their issues, their pain points are being addressed rather than just trying to make a buck. And we've talked about that numerous times in past episodes. Your website in general, as we said in our previous episodes, has to address customer pain points. You have to show your customers that you know what their problem is, and that if you don't know what their problem is, you want to find out what it is and tackle it with your product or service. And when you educate your audience with blog posts, you are helping to destroy their problems. You're helping to answer all their questions.
An educated consumer is more likely to be able to say, here's what my problem is. According to what I've read on your website, I've ruled out this, this, and this. Could it be this, this, or this? Instead,
Right.
which reduces the amount of time your technician has to spend diagnosing the problem. If they can diagnose it for you, to give you an easier time and shorter diagnostic time, which leads to a faster turnaround on the repair
Right.
on your product or service.
Right. If you can get your customers to take care of certain housekeeping tasks ahead of time before your technician comes in to perform service, then it just makes things easier for them and the job gets done quicker, basically.
Yeah, because if, for example, you are an HVAC company, if they can tell you that the compressor had, if they can figure out that the compressor's blown up and they can tell you that, that reduces the amount of backlog that it takes for your company to have to come out, diagnose a problem, and then get one ordered. Whereas if they can tell you what model of who the manufacturer of the HVAC unit is, and if they're smart enough, they can identify what compressor is that they need, then that saves your technician a lot of legwork and a lot of time of frustration when they can just simply go out and swap out the part when needed.
One way to take care of that process would be to have some sort of questionnaire in your website. And we discussed this a few episodes ago as well. If you have a questionnaire in your website that asks about what model you have, or if you have a questionnaire asking about what you're using, and if you can get specific, that's great, because now you can have your technicians already doing the research ahead of time versus coming to your property, looking at the air conditioner, and then doing the research, which just takes more time.
Yeah, it makes it more expensive for the consumer. Whereas if they're aware of what they need, they can give you a much clearer idea of what you need to bring with you in order to accomplish the repair.
Right.
Which reduces your turnaround time and their expense.
Right.
They'll appreciate that in the long run. I know I certainly have.
It's very useful because you're saving time and money by doing it that way.
Yeah, because I find that when I was able to explain what happens to my old system to my HVAC technician company that I have a contract with these days, and they were able to get me squared away, they ended up having to replace my entire system because the whole system had blown up simultaneously.
Wow.
Every critical part had gone into cascade failure.
Wow. That's unfortunate.
Yes, and it was expensive, but I'm not at all surprised because of how old the unit was.
Right. HVAC companies could benefit greatly from situations like that if they know ahead of time what your needs are. And I'm just reiterating what I said a few moments ago. If you can capture your customers' needs before you even show up on their premises, you're doing them a huge favor, and you're also showing that you care.
Yeah, because if you can, through a simple questionnaire on the website or over the phone with your sales team, identify that parts X, Y, and Z in their system are dead, especially an HVAC system, then you can say, okay, this is not going to be worth repairing. What you'll need to do is have us come out and replace it. Here's our price quote to do that because of here, and here's why the law says that you would have to replace it instead of fix it. And you can give them a rundown, and then they can decide what to do with that. A lot of them won't be happy if they have to replace their HVAC system, but at least they'll know.
Right. That is a perfect example of how you educate your audience ahead of time. And a how-to article or blog post would be the best way to address such a topic. I want to talk about some SEO pointers that content marketers and business owners should take to heart when they are preparing blog posts. For one thing, you need to make sure that the keywords that your audience is most likely going to be searching for are in the title of your post and that they're also mentioned at least 5 times within the body copy of the article.
But the reason you want to do that is to not only establish yourself as an authority on the subject with your consumer, is to also make it easier for Google to tag your page.
Right.
When the web crawler is scanning your page for local repairs in the geographic area you serve.
Right. That's why it's important to make sure that your name, address, and phone number, or NAP as we call it for short, is consistent on your website and on all directories that you're listed in.
Yeah.
When it comes to writing these how-to articles, another way to optimize it for mobile search, because a lot of people do use voice search and they ask questions to Siri and Alexa and Google, title your post, if it's a how-to article, title your post as a question that your consumer is most likely asking.
Yes, and the reason why is because if you title it that, it's going to populate in the results locally.
Yes, that's correct. That's 100% correct. And you want to make sure that if you're a local business and you want to get found in your area easily, you have to focus on making sure your website is optimized for local SEO.
Yep, which is something we covered, I think, last time.
We did a webinar on it about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Not only is search engine optimized websites easier on consumers, but it really takes a lot of the homework out of the consumer.
Right.
Because of the way Google works. Because if they're asking that question and it pops up that you're a local business that is an authority on the issue, guess who the consumer's likely to call? They'll call you, the local authority on the subject.
Right, that's 100% correct.
Quite often, especially if it's a repair or replacement they need, if they know that you're doing quality repair work, they're more likely to call you over your competitor, even if you might be slightly more expensive, if you can save them time out of their schedule by getting specific answers out of them first through that questionnaire, which saves your technician some of the legwork. Why you don't want to have them give you generic answers like it's broken or it's not working. But if you can kind of tease out what might be the reason for the malfunction, you can save your technician a lot of time and hard work trying to figure out what exactly is wrong with the unit.
Right. Because each unit is unique. You can't exactly write one article and have it pertain to every AC unit that exists. However, the questionnaire does speed up the process for when you actually have a technician from your company out on a service job investigating the issue.
Yeah, because if you can identify the most common problems common to HVAC systems and the reasons that they occur, that helps the consumer to do a little bit of their own detective work, safely, of course, to figure out what's working or what's not working and the reason why.
Right.
Then they can kind of give you a heads up of what they think might be wrong to kind of preload your technician with a way to identify, okay, the consumer said this, so this and this would not be true. This and this might be the case. When they show up, it gives them that much easier a time to figure out what's wrong.
When you're writing articles, whether it be how-to articles or blog posts, you can also include pictures, and using the example that you're giving, you could have pictures of these parts and where they're located and what to look out for if one of these parts is going bad.
Yep, and that will save the consumer a lot of time and frustration, because if you do that for them, you'll be the one they call if it starts to go bad before it's complete failure. And then you can replace the part before it becomes oh my gosh, you have to replace the entire unit because not only did this fail, but when it failed, it took this, and this with it. You'll have to replace the whole system.
Right. So a diagram would be a good way to showcase the different parts of the unit and also outline how each part should be taken care of. Because you don't want to just rely on text alone. Text alone is boring. A lot of people don't like reading endless paragraphs of text. However, in any blog post, you do need to have a good balance of text and pictures. Maybe you can have your diagram within your post. You can have pictures of the units. You can have pictures of anything else you're showcasing above the paragraphs where relevant. And of course, you'll need to make sure that you include alt text, which is the text that shows up when people use screen readers. Not only helping people who are visually impaired, but you're also giving Google some more content for them to spider, because they do look for what the text that's within those alt tags. So keywords is important there. Well, we've been using HVAC companies as an example, or we've been giving tips for how HVAC companies could benefit from this type of posting. However, when you're in any industry and you have a small business, you're going to want to make sure that you're blogging regularly about topics that are relevant to your industry. For example, take this company, take CDG for example. We have written blog posts about how to optimize an e-commerce website, how to capture more leads with email marketing, and also how to create a buyer persona before you even start marketing. Those are examples of industry-related topics that we can blog about because we're in that industry. So with your small business, for those of you listening, you need to step back and answer this question for yourself. What types of blog posts or how-to articles can you write and serve to your audience who will find it useful, and they'll find it so entertaining to the point that they have to share it with all their friends, right? How-to articles are very popular. People look those up all the time, and reiterating what I said earlier, if you can title your post as a question, not only does it help you locally, but in general, it's going to get found easier when somebody does a voice search, when they ask your phone that question.
Yeah, and the reason they would, especially in the appliance repair field, if you can title your blog post questions and you do appliance repair, if you title your blog post as questions that they would commonly ask about the most common appliances that break down and end up being replaced the soonest, then that can give you leads, because when it's located locally, it's more likely to be shown to consumers in your area. And if you can, by explaining the nature of why the problem would be asked, why they're asking the question, that's a key factor in their decision to use or not use your business.
Right.
So unless you're targeting business professionals, keep the jargon to a minimum.
Right, that's right. It should always be written in plain English, because the majority of the people who read these types of articles are general consumers, not professionals.
Yeah, and people do not like to have to decode jargon.
Right. They also don't like endless walls of text either. That's why I said earlier, make sure you have a good balance of pictures and text. If you can incorporate some videos and other pieces of content in there, that's great too.
Yeah. A good mix of that would be diagrams that are clearly labeled and detailed about the problems that can be caused by individual part failures, especially with regard to appliances.
Right. That's all very concise and straightforward. No jargon, and the general user understands what they're reading. I do want to mention also that, and this is also very important too in terms of SEO, if your blog post is titled as a question, then it can also show up as a featured snippet on the Google results. You know what a featured snippet is, right?
Yes, it's an advertisement for the results you get. If you can get your local business featured on that, it's going to increase the amount of stuff you have coming in, because you will be looked at by Google as the number one local authority.
Right, right. They feature your business or the answer to your question right there on the side in that section where it highlights the question you asked, and it has a drop-down menu with the answer. That's how you end up getting found.
And when you provide quality customer service to the consumer that you are targeting, and you do it for a fair price, especially if you provide a referral incentive bonus program,
Mm-hmm.
they will be telling all their friends that are having similar issues about your company and tell them, go here. This is who I would tell you to use because this is what they've done for me. Here's what my problem was. Here's what they did about it. This is why you need to contact them for your issues.
Right.
And word of mouth advertising is much more believed than anything they'll see on TV, on a computer, or on their smartphone advertising.
That's right. Referrals are considered to be the highest compliment one can give to a business. And the majority of the business we get here at CDG is word of mouth marketing. That's always been our number one source of referral, our number one source of leads.
That's because your customers are often impressed with what they're doing and they're wanting all of their friends to use your service because not only are you providing a kickback program on the development,
right,
but you've also in their eyes established yourself as an authority in the field,
right,
and you're providing a needed service at a reasonable price.
That's exactly what customers look for when they're trying to find a business to help them solve the problem that they have. Remember, your customers always have a problem that needs solving. That's why they come to you. You need to make sure that you can address their pain points and make sure that you offer stellar customer service. You're always punctual, and of course that you've solved their problem without any issues.
Yeah, without having to take out a loan most of the time,
right,
unless you're a car dealer.
Mm-hmm. But that's different.
That's a much different kind of problem to have than fixing an appliance or fixing a car or something of that nature.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Blog posting is a great way to start because blog posts can be repurposed into other types of content. Let's start with infographics. Infographics are a great way at presenting statistics and other pieces of key information without having to write large paragraphs, and it's in an eye-catching format, and it's illustrated. Infographics are a great way to summarize blog posts, especially if you're presenting a lot of facts. If you just want to simply present the statistical portions of your blog post to the public without having to write more than you need to, you just want to give them the straight up statistics, then an infographic is a way to go. You can share these on your websites, you can post them on social media, and you can even insert them into your blog post to help summarize the points easier.
Yeah, because it gives them a clear, easy, concise readout of what you're trying to explain.
Right.
In a format their mind is more easily able to grasp
mm-hmm.
than 2 or 3 paragraphs of text.
Right.
That their mind then has to digest.
People like bite-sized pieces of information. When you have to read a lot, and I know this to be true for myself because I was never a big fan of classes in college where you had to study textbooks. It was just too much reading. Versus when you just have a graphic that's straightforward and tells you only what you need to know and nothing more. It makes things a lot easier. Because reading these blog posts and trying to absorb the information is no different than opening up your textbook and trying to study for a major test. And think about your final exams, for example. When you have a final exam, you have to memorize several chapters worth of content, and the general consumer doesn't even like to read one paragraph of a blog post. So how do you solve this problem? You fashion it into, or you recycle your content into something visual that they can easily understand. Maybe not even with an infographic. You can also take your blog post and turn it into an explainer video.
Yeah, those are, I think, very helpful, especially when you need to be shown how to do something
right
correctly, especially if you've not done it before. An explainer video that explains what the parts are and explains how to do it step by step, kind of leads you through it a step at a time so that they can pause it as they need to instead of doing each step so that they do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And then be able to diagnose what went wrong if something were to go wrong during the install.
How-to videos are very valuable for that reason alone. When people write blog posts on these content, I've noticed that they don't even bother to include pictures, and I've had this problem myself before trying to follow some how-to articles. Sometimes I need to know where a certain thing they're mentioning is, and there's no picture showing where it is. That doesn't help, and then you get stuck. In a video, you can demonstrate. You can show exactly where everything is, and you can follow along easier. You could say cooking shows, for example, are just large format how-to videos because you follow along with them and you're shown exactly how to set the oven, how to cut your vegetables, how to mix certain sauces, things like that, which is a lot easier versus if you're reading an article about it and you might not know exactly how to do it specifically versus having a video to show you how to do it.
Yeah, because they show you, especially if you're cooking with gas,
Mm-hmm.
and you watch these professional cooks.
Mm-hmm.
When you cook with gas, you'll get a pretty good feel for where to set the flame at to do the desired cooking.
Right.
But when you can show the cooking shows, show them exactly what the flame needs to look like most of the time.
Right. Imagine trying to tell somebody how to set the flame or position the flame in an article that has no visual content and they just read it. It doesn't really help, right?
Yeah, that's why cooking shows are just explainer videos of how to do it start to finish.
Right.
And as long as you don't deviate from the explainer video on a cooking show, you will get the same results that the professionals do.
Right. All you have to do is follow the directions, and it's easier when you have visual content like this to help aid in making sure that you do the right things, because I'm the type of person who learns from the hands-on approach. I actually have to do what they're talking about in order for me to truly learn it. I personally don't learn by reading about it unless the directions are very specific. It's the same thing. When you can give your audience something that they can get their hands dirty with, they're guaranteed to learn.
Yeah, because most people, believe it or not, are not what you'd call visual learners, but hands-on.
Right.
When you're not only showing them how to do it, but actually guiding them through how they're doing it themselves
Mm-hmm.
with an explainer video, especially if they're doing it while watching your explainer video.
Right.
That will, in some cases, in some areas, can turn them into the most qualified expert on the matter within 20 miles of their location.
Right. And in some cases, worldwide, even though you may not have a worldwide audience, it still helps to gain exposure outside of your, what I call your comfort zone. Because popularity does help you gain more exposure too, especially when people are taking it and sharing it everywhere.
Yeah, because if you can generate the kind of information that consumers need when they need it, they will look to you when they have a problem that they think you know how to solve.
Right, right. And going back to recycling content, we just covered how blog posts can be recycled into infographics and video. Another way that you can recycle your blog posts would be into podcast episodes. Many business owners do not think about getting into podcasting, but it's actually easier and more convenient for the general public to listen to a podcast versus reading a blog post. And here's why. Many people don't have time to just sit down and read. A podcast is portable. You can listen to it while you're driving. You can listen to it while you're working out or while you're doing other things on the go, right from your phone with a set of earbuds. And you can also syndicate podcasts across different platforms. There are many platforms you can place your podcast on, and it doesn't cost anything if you have the right host. Sounder, for example, is a free podcasting host. It generates the XML feed, which is what you take and plug in to the platform that you want to syndicate on. For example, you can syndicate your podcast on Facebook, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, TuneIn, among many other popular platforms. And it especially helps when you're on platforms like iHeartRadio, for example, because these are home to many different local radio stations. And people who are browsing this platform for radio stations are also browsing for podcasts. So your podcast is in the same audience as those who listen to your local radio stations now when you place it on a platform like that.
And that helps make that increases your visibility, because if they notice your local business,
right,
and especially if they might know somebody who could use your service, even if they don't need it themselves currently,
right,
they might tell that person about your business as someone that was recommended in their feed from platform blah, blah, blah.
Right, right. And being on that platform just gives your business more credibility because you're on a well-known platform that many people use.
Yeah, and honestly, there are businesses that I don't go to, even though they could probably fix my issue, simply because I don't know what they charge, number
Right.
one. And number two, they don't answer the phone when I call.
Right. That's typical. Usually businesses that do that are very small and they don't have a big team, or they're sole proprietorships where they have one person running the whole show. That's usually why they don't pick up the phone. In general, you want to make sure that your business has a decent exposure wherever you possibly can put it. And these podcasting platforms are a great place to start.
And I would agree with that, because there's been a couple of businesses that I did not know existed in my area until I found them on a local platform that I use for searching for local businesses in my area when I need a problem solved.
Mm-hmm.
And these local businesses I'd never even heard of before, but I gave them a call, told them what I needed, and they said, "Oh yeah, we can do that. Here's how much we charge." And it was half what the big box retailer would charge me to do exactly the same thing.
Right.
So I went with a local business that I hadn't heard of before. And I was very, very happy with the service I received. Every time I need to do that again, I'm going to go back to that small business,
Right.
not the big box retailer.
When you work with a small business, you can always expect to get personalized service. Sometimes they're not always the most affordable, though. In your case, it was. But you're always going to get personalized attention with somebody who actually cares about getting your problem taken care of and is concerned about you, the consumer. You're not going to get that when you go to a chain or a big box type place.
Yeah, I mean, Walmart's a busy place, and quite frankly, the employees are not that nice to each other.
That's true. They're not. Many of them are rude, and I've seen that. And that's not just at Walmart. That's really at any place in general.
Businesses can only hire out of who applies, and quite often, local businesses that want to be an authority on a certain subject will be much more selective than a big box retailer will be.
Yes, that's true. And big box retailers, being that they are well known, established, and are Fortune 500 companies, they don't really need to worry about content marketing to get business because the general public already knows who they are. That doesn't mean they don't do their own content marketing. I'm just saying that even if they didn't do any, they would still be rather effective due to their notoriety.
Yeah.
You know, speaking about small businesses, they need to put in a lot of legwork. That's why it's important to make sure you're pumping out content that people really want to read. And not only do they want to read, but can they benefit from it? Can they share it with other people who will then benefit from it as well and possibly build up a pipeline of leads that could be coming your way? It's possible to repurpose content that you've already written into these other formats, as I've been saying. You can recycle blog posts into podcasts and vice versa. You can repurpose blog posts and infographics into each other, basically. You can also publish out white papers that explain certain facts to your audience.
Police departments are notorious for using infographics to explain crime rates.
Right. I've seen that on Twitter. I've seen that on Instagram for most police departments. It's a great way to educate the audience.
Yeah, because it gives the general public an idea of what kind of criminals are circulating in the neighborhood.
Right.
And what to be on the lookout for the most from your local criminals, not necessarily the international thugs.
Right. Just like with small business, local organizations are going to post specifically relevant information to what's going on in their communities, not what's going on internationally.
Yeah, and there's been more than once where I've been more likely to trust a local business or a local newscast over anything that I might read at the national level.
Right.
Simply because the local people have more credibility with me because they're in my community.
Right.
And the people I'm likely to run into at my local, not to mention a big name business, but they're the people I'm likely to run into at my local 7-Eleven.
Right, right. The same principle applies to small business. Because they are local to your community, they're most likely the company you're going to go with because they're nearby. But the only thing that could hurt you from getting chosen over your competition is how well you address your customers' pain points. And we've talked about that several times already, why it's important to establish yourself as an authority.
And stick to your contracts, especially in the case of my HVAC company. They've made it absolutely clear to me that as long as I pay my payment on time, that every time it needs to be serviced, they'll come out, they'll fix the problem at no extra charge.
Right.
Honor their contract. And I've found that that's been a lifesaver several times when my several $100 thermostat blew up a couple of times because of local power grid issues.
Right. Now, how would you take that scenario and how well they've taken care of you and repurpose that into content? I'm going to tell you the answer in a second, but I want you to try to answer that question first.
I would say that that would be a customer testimony of these people not only know how to fix your HVAC system, I can explain that they've honored their contract with me and that they really know their business.
Right.
They don't send somebody unqualified to handle your issue. And especially if you can give them a specific answer about something that's not working, they're that much better able to assist you in the long run because they don't have to load as many parts on their truck, which reduces their gas fee, which allows them to serve more people in the community more efficiently by not carrying parts they're not going to need. When it comes to trying to make sure that I'm educated on what to look for in my HVAC system so that I can call them before it becomes a major problem, they can do preventative maintenance before the system goes into cascade failure again.
Right. That's what you would want to talk about in your testimonial. Reviews are also a ranking factor in terms of local SEO. So you could write a review for your HVAC company explaining that, and then other people will see it and they'll be encouraged to check this company out as well too. And bonus points if the company decides to do a video testimonial, because when they see an actual satisfied customer talking, they can relate to the customer and it could actually pull on their heartstrings and get them to want to check out this company as well.
Especially in my case, I am not just a local consumer. I also happen to be a military service member who's retired from active duty. When they find out the business is veteran friendly, that can be big brownie points, especially in a community with several military bases in this area, because they'll consider them to be that much more of an authority over the next guy who's not taking care of their customers as efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Because people do their research. They'll start window shopping online, basically trying to find which companies worked out the best. They're going to research. They're going to see which one offers good pricing, which one has the best reviews, and which one looks to be the most honest. They're going to look to see who's veteran friendly. They're going to look to see who's been delivering on time. If you have too many one-star reviews, you're probably not going to get chosen. Those are all things they look into, and your HVAC company that you've been working with really should consider contacting you to do a video testimonial, because I know you'd be able to help them get more business based on what you've told me alone.
Well, and not only that, I've actually been promoting their company on social media with people ask me about problems that I have actually, because of my own background with having to deal with my own HVAC systems in the past, that I can explain to them that based on the age of their unit, what kind of freon that it uses, and what they're going to have to do to their system is usually replace it because of the particular part failures and loss that they're running into. And that's why the honest HVAC people are telling them, sorry, you'll have to get a new system, simply because of the loss that are on the books.
Right.
And I've been able to explain that to them, and even though they're frustrated, they're grateful that I'm honest with them, because I'm trying to help them save a little bit of money by helping them to understand that they may need to take advantage of the HVAC system that I use so they can don't have to come up with 20 grand for an HVAC system out of pocket, which most people won't have an extra 20 grand in the bank.
Right. Well,
but instead, they can spread the payments over 8 to 10 years and just have another payment on the books that's a monthly payment they're making, so that when everything does go through, that they're getting their service contract and all that, so that they don't have to worry about shelling out an extra $400 every time the X-ray technician has to come over and either adjust for the seasonal changes on the HVAC system, which for my particular company is included at no extra cost in my contract.
Is your HVAC company talking about these key points you're sharing with me anywhere in their marketing, in their social media videos, or in their website? Because everything you explained is all stuff that they should be talking about to the public. They need to present all this information to the public. Everything that
Yeah,
you told me.
this is everything that they present to the public as well. I'm just recycling their marketing materials where they explain that most of the time, if it's made before year XYZ or if it uses a certain type of Freon, they really market their Advantage program, which is their program that basically qualifies you to make a monthly payment so you don't have to come up with 20 grand out of pocket for an HVAC system for your house.
Right.
And they promote the service calls at no extra cost as part of the maintenance contract over the period of time that you're paying off the unit. And they actually say that as long as you pay it off properly, that you can go ahead and not only do that, but also at the time of the completion of the contract, if you were qualified on their credit, you can have them come in, take the old unit out, and replace it with a new one on a new contract, so that you've always got an up-to-date system that's got the current technology compliant with current law, so that you have less need to worry about your climate comfort needs in your house or place of business that they're maintaining. The HVAC could take that pressure off of you because that's what they do all day.
And what methods of content marketing does this company use to present all of that information? What different methods do they use based on what we've talked about?
Social media, email, they advertise on the local radio and on TV. And they also have a very well thought out website.
Right, with some how-to articles, right?
Yes, how to diagnose what's wrong with your HVAC system in a way that's safe for the consumer, that's not going to, as long as you follow the steps correctly, not going to kill you, which can be critical, which also will allow you to not have to take anything apart on the HVAC unit itself, which can be extremely dangerous.
Right, right. You mentioned email. I want to talk about our final topic, which is on email marketing. Email marketing is not dead, contrary to popular belief. There's a lot of people who say that it is, but it can actually be very powerful. So how do they use email marketing? What do they send out specifically to their
Receipts
audience?
for your payments. And they also offer email reminders for when you need to call them so that you can schedule your HVAC maintenance appointment.
Mm-hmm.
They do email reminders and they'll do email receipts so that every time you send them a payment, they send you an email receipt of the payment.
Do they also utilize email marketing for newsletters or some sort of subscription where people can sign up for to get tips or other useful educational content or even promotions?
I'm not exactly sure, but they do have a customer referral bonus program for existing customers who refer someone to their company who's got an HVAC issue.
Right.
This goes back into the customer referral bonus programs that you've talked about, where if you can give your customer a discount on their bill or give them something equivalent to a gift card to or some cash back rebate on their service that you're providing them,
Mm-hmm.
if they bring you a new customer, then you're providing them with financial incentive to promote your company. And people tend to be very greedy and they'll take advantage of that, especially when they're happy with your company. Mm-hmm. Your company is going to be one of the companies that they talk about with their family and friends if the subject of what you cover comes up in conversation. They're going to be like, well, here's who I use and here's why. And if you have problem XYZ, this guy can solve it for you. And here's why I think that. And that goes back to word of mouth marketing.
Right.
Which is one of the more powerful methods because I'm more likely to trust my neighbor over the TV.
Yeah, your colleague or your friend is always going to be more trustworthy. You're always going to be more willing to listen to them versus something you saw on TV or on the internet because they're a personal connection and you can understand why they were satisfied.
Yeah, and that's why for several online companies that aren't local to me, I still promote them anyway.
Right.
In particular, CDG BizCast and Trilogy Media, to name two well-known YouTube personalities
Mm-hmm.
that I promote their content of, because I receive emotional value out of what they publish. And by utilizing their services, they can learn about scams and how to present their business, among other things, so that they're aware of what the latest threats to their business consumers can be, and take steps to make sure that those don't happen to their customers
Mm-hmm.
to the extent they're able to prevent it.
Right.
Anything that you can do for customer information security. If consumers know that you use industry-leading practices for customer information safety, even if your competitor doesn't charge you as much as you charge, they'll go with you instead.
Right. Cheaper isn't always better.
That is correct. And sometimes the information security cost of going with someone cheaper is not worth the hassle you will run into later, especially as it relates to things like identity fraud.
Right. We're going to have a future episode all about cybersecurity where we talk about identity theft and ways you can protect yourself online, as well as scam awareness, how email marketing is effective, and how businesses can utilize it to generate more leads. Now, the way you just described to me, the way you just explained how your HVAC company uses it to remind customers, that's a good way to get more leads as well. Because sometimes the customers themselves might not even think about it. They might not think it's time for regular maintenance. When you send a reminder, it wakes them up. And it converts to a lead when they see how important it is that they get this done.
Yeah, because my local car repair shop, when I had a car, had an email reminder. They remind me based on the guesstimate of how I was driving at the time. They sent me a reminder that was usually within 200-300 miles of my actual driving of when they thought that I might want to come in and have my oil changed. I found that to be very helpful because I didn't really think about it.
Right.
As a first-time car owner, changing the oil wasn't something I thought about on a routine basis. So having that reminder having those reminders to call my HVAC guy and call my car shop to have oil changed was very helpful in avoiding some very expensive problems.
Right. It helps you, and it also helps them because now they have a lead that's going to convert to a sale.
Yeah, especially when it comes to car oil, because you don't want your car to self-destruct from a lack of properly changed oil.
Right. That's true. I also want to mention some other methods of email marketing that small business owners can benefit from. Email marketing can be where you take all the content that we've discussed and advertise it in one place where they can easily find it. If you just wrote a blog post, mention it in your email newsletter, or a podcast or video, you can put those in there as well too. That way, whenever you publish something new, they'll have an email, basically makes one centralized place where they can look for it, click on it, and pull it up and start listening and reading or whatever it is you're promoting. And
yeah, because I know for a fact that every time they publish a new blog post, I get an email from Social Security about it.
Right? They're doing the right thing. When you're promoting email newsletters, you want to tell your audience, what are you going to send them? How often are you going to send them? And are you going to unsubscribe them by law if they request to be removed from your mailing list? And it's important that you outline these things to give them a good sense of security so that your emails don't look like spam. You got to remember that when you send out an email, you're basically a guest in their mailbox, similar to if you're being invited to somebody's home, you're a guest in their home and you're expected to behave yourself appropriately. So that means you want to make sure that you have appropriate headlines or subject lines. They're straightforward and compelling. Write something that makes your user want to open that email. Don't just say, this is so-and-so newsletter. Explain why they need to open it and what they'll benefit if they open it. Do something useful with it. If you don't have something compelling, they're going to eventually unsubscribe and they're going to start deleting all the emails that they originally subscribed to. If you're not fulfilling your promise, they're definitely going to unsubscribe. So you want to make sure that you have some good, helpful, informative content, and it's not all just promotional material. You don't want them to subscribe to your email list and it's just ads for you promoting your services. If you're promoting your services and not offering anything of value, they're not going to care about that. Now, if you throw maybe a discount code or a coupon in there like many email newsletters do, that's different. But if you're just simply sending out emails to remind them that you sell so-and-so, they're probably not interested in buying at the moment. They're not going to find that useful. You could just see more people unsubscribing.
Yeah, however, they'll find it useful if you send them a monthly reminder to check their car oil, or if you're an HVAC company reminding people to change their filter every month. They'll find that helpful if they don't have an alert for it set up on their own.
Right. And of course, they'll also find any pieces of content that you publish and share in your email newsletters very useful too. So that way you're establishing yourself as an authority and gaining more exposure. Because if they like what they see, they're going to forward the email and they're going to share it with other people who will then browse your content, and you now have another possible lead coming your way.
Yeah, and especially if you're in the car repair business, a really good thing to do is to keep up with the latest recalls on cars so that you can warn your customers every time by email blast every time there's a new recall of what models are affected, especially if you know that they have that particular make and model year of vehicle, whether it's included in a recall or not. You can say, your car might be affected by this recall. Please bring it in so I can take a look at it and fix the problem for you if it's affected.
Right.
They'll find that very helpful.
If it's urgent pieces of information like that, then it's very important that you share it on all possible mediums. You could do an article or a blog post. You can also post about it everywhere on social media and, of course, email blasts. So when it has to do with urgent topics like that, you need to really ramp up the game and alert people like crazy, because you don't want anything happening to them later.
Especially on food safety recalls. I follow the FDA recall Twitter, and whenever I do check it, especially if the recall has out within the last 15 days, I always retweet it in case there's somebody that follows my account that doesn't know how to follow the main FDA account. Because I know that not everybody can follow all the government accounts, and so sometimes they might follow their friends instead who keep up with that.
Right. That's the most important thing about the retweeting feature on Twitter. You can reshare it on your own timeline if you feel it's worth having your own friends check it out. And for food safety recalls, that's certainly important. That's where it's important for more than one person to talk about it. The FDA and also the manufacturer of affected food product, they need to get on their social media and start sharing it like crazy there too. Because when you share that type of information, you're showing that you care about your customers and that you're not just trying to be greedy by trying to sell products even if they're defective.
Yeah, and especially in the food safety game, if you're not involved in food production or food safety, your friends that read your posts about it when you're sharing recall information, they'll know that you care about their safety.
Right. Like the old saying goes, sharing is caring.
Especially when it comes to recall notices.
Exactly. But on a more positive side, if you're sharing your positive experience that you had with a certain company, you're also helping the owner of that company, and you're also helping all your friends who might need services from that company that you had such a great experience with.
Exactly. Because you never know when they might need that, and if they go back to their issues and they see that you've had this really impressive experience and it's been repeating every time you've had a problem, this particular type of problem with this particular type of subject, the company has come to the rescue. That's the company they're going to call.
Right.
They're going to hopefully be correct in assuming that company not only will care about them, but provide them the same service that they're providing to you.
That's right. It's important to write reviews and share them with your friends. If you, the customer, was featured in a video testimonial, share that with everybody you know too. There's so many ways out there that you can get the word out for this wonderful company. You just need to know how to do it. And the reason why most business owners do not get the exposure based on this type of feedback is because they don't ask for it. They don't ask their customers nicely to write them a review or ask them if they might be interested in doing a video testimonial. And most of the time, they're going to tell you yes, they'll do it. If you can give them some sort of incentive to do it, such as a discount or a free product or a coupon or something like that, chances are they're going to say yes, especially if you're expecting them to return to you very soon for another product or service.
Yeah, that is definitely true.
Mm-hmm.
If you take care of your customers and make sure that you're visible on the internet, that your customers who have a good experience are going to refer their friends to you for whatever service you provide if they are asked for a referral. And one of the best things that you can do for your believability in your market is to ask your existing customers, especially if it's a repeat customer, for a video testimonial that you can feature on TV or on the website.
Mm-hmm. The more you can relate to your possible customer, the more they're going to feel compelled to come to your company versus a competitor.
And customer service is key. So if you have a customer service agent who is causing problems, get rid of them.
Exactly.
Replace them with someone who will be nice to your customers. Or that person might be the reason your company goes out of business.
It's sad that so many companies out there, especially chains, have toxic employees working for them on the front line being rude to customers. They never do anything about them and they end up working there for years despite all the complaints. You don't want to be one of those companies. Actually show some company pride, show you care about the customer, educate your customer, and show them that you mean the world to them and that you're more than ready to destroy that problem that's hindering them.
Exactly. Because if you are a business solving the need of the consumers in your market, then you are going to have one of the most loyal customer bases out there.
Exactly. Well said, Justin. And that will conclude this episode of the CDG BizCast. I thank you all for tuning in today. A very special thank you to Justin Rayl for joining us and sharing all this valuable information.